Hey, welcome to another One Another Marriage podcast where we seek to help you strengthen your marriage so that you can have greater fulfillment and impact on those around you. We are David and Theresa Mabry. Hello, Theresa.
Hello, David.
Hello, David. And we are so excited to have episode number 2 here. And today this episode, you will hear us discuss our top tips, our best tips for communication.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about communication today and some of our hot takes. Hot takes on communication within a marital relationship, or your relationship if you're premarital.
Yeah.
This is also important for you, but to get the foundational. And we have 7 of them, so hang on for those 7 as we walk through this today.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
But before we get to that, we are in April.
Yeah.
And whenever
Mhm.
we get into April, we have just completed our family of 5 birthdays. Like
Yes.
this always stays with me.
Mhm.
I know that we have 3 grown children now,
Mhm.
but the original Mabry 5, right?
Yeah, the
You,
Mabry
me,
5.
Alex,
the bigs.
Taylor, Gabe.
The bigs. We call them the bigs. There's a
Yeah.
reason why.
So the original Mabry 5, we had, we always have, we start off the year 2 birthdays in January,
Mm-hmm.
2 birthdays in March, 1
Mhm.
birthday in April.
Mm-hmm.
And I always feel like once we get beyond that last one, it's kind of like we always have that birthday season.
And the one, by the way, the one in April was barely in April.
Barely.
It's Taylor.
Yeah.
She was born April 2nd.
Right.
And I was just so grateful that she was not born on April 1st. And no offense to anyone out there that has a April Fool's birthday.
Yeah.
But I was kind of glad. I was going to tell you that when you went into labor, cross your legs.
Oh, yeah,
You're
you
not
were
allowed
going to tell me? I think I remember that you did tell me. You were like, we are
Cross
not
your
having a
legs.
baby on April Fool's Day. And I
Don't
said,
give birth.
excuse me? The
Right.
baby will come.
Well, you could have given birth in March, for heaven's sakes. Let's have 3 March birthdays.
Oh, that would have been fun too. However, we're at the end of our birthday season.
Can't
The
force
2
these things.
daughter-in-laws that we have now joined into our family, we
Mhm.
now have a birthday in May and a birthday in
Mhm.
September.
Mm-hmm.
But it always, I don't know, it's for so many years, that was just our Mabry 5 right after Christmas. Man, we just came right into birthday season, and
Mm-hmm.
it's always
Mhm.
a fun time. So,
yeah. So we just
anyway.
celebrated Taylor's birthday,
Yes.
and so we're grateful for that. And
so
happy belated birthday to our daughter Taylor. And
we are complete now.
yeah, we are.
We are complete.
You complete me. We are complete, and that's another highlight for us.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So, one of the things that we want to do
Mhm.
as part of our podcast
mhm.
is to give the listeners a little picture into our brains. And the way we do that is...
scary place.
It is. The way we do that is David and I for years have shared with each other puzzles. And
Mhm.
puzzles are just those things that you see happening in the world around you. It could be within
Mhm.
your own home. It could be outside. It could be at work. It could be watching other people. It could be part of nature. I don't know. Whatever it is that you just kind of think like, wonder why that is, or
And
different things. So
And it's important to note that this is not a puzzle about your partner.
Your partner,
Like we
no.
try to, when we train couples, we say,
yeah.
don't have a puzzle. Like, I'm really puzzled why you keep wearing that shirt.
Yeah, exactly. That's not good, not appropriate.
No.
These puzzles are strictly about anything beyond your partner,
Mhm.
your spouse.
Mhm.
And so, and there is no answer to them necessarily. But sometimes people don't always share them,
Mhm.
and it helps to give each other just a glimpse into the brain of Theresa,
That's right.
the brain of David. So we thought it would be fun that we will take turns on our different episodes sharing a puzzle. The other person will not know what our puzzle is, so you'll hear fresh commentary
Puzzle of the week.
on that. So yeah,
So
it'll
it's
be
puzzle
puzzle
of the
of the week.
And we don't even have so we've heard other podcasts that have like a little like song that goes with a regular
Right.
kind of thing. We don't have that. It's like,
Well,
here's the
we'll have
puzzle
to
of the
think
week.
on that. There might be. Is there a song out there that goes with puzzle?
Well, I don't know.
Not that I'm aware of, but
I don't know. But the challenge is that, we're going to do a puzzle of the week
something
each
like
week. That's the plan right now. Who knows?
puzzle, something like that. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for singing. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I'm puzzled why you did that, even though we're not supposed to have a puzzle about you. But it's
You really aren't puzzled as to why I did that.
no,
'cause
I'm
you know
glad.
me.
Okay, so puzzle week,
Okay,
and
puzzle of the week.
the encouragement is that
Mhm.
the couple are one another couples out there,
Mhm.
that they will have regular communication about puzzles that
Yeah.
they have throughout their day. Let your
Absolutely.
partner into your brain.
Right.
So Theresa, you're bringing to me a
Right.
puzzle today.
So I'm getting to share the puzzle, and the puzzle is, and I know that you'll have an answer for it. Not that I'm wanting an answer, but you will have an answer. I am really and truly puzzled as to the amount of men that have grown beards. I mean, and
Why
I'm
why
looking
does
at
that puzzle
one.
you?
I'm
I
looking
know.
at one right now.
That's right. A manly.
but it's
Can you
just-
say manly man? You're looking at a manly man.
I'm
who's
looking at a
growing
manly
beard.
man who's grown a beard.
Thank
But
you.
like, and I'm talking like
Mhm.
like guys of all ages, right? And it just seems like you look around and you're hard pressed to kind of find a guy
a
that
clean faced
it's a
gentleman.
clean faced, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like it is just the thing. And I know that this is, I'm not naive to think that this hasn't been going on for a while, right?
Mhm.
I mean, years ago there was the, no shave November, right?
Yep.
And then everybody would shave, right?
Mhm.
But there's just this like thing going on right now
Mhm.
with men and their facial hair and beards.
Why do you
And
think
I
that
don't
is? What's
I
the
don't
deal?
mind a guy who can grow the beard. The
Mhm.
ones that just irritate me are the patchy or the young kid who's just or they only grow it
When you
like under
cannot.
their chin,
Yeah, chin
on
strap.
the neck.
That's called a chin strap.
Oh my gosh.
And so the different styles, that's right.
No, I'm
And
puzzled
so-
as to that because
Yeah.
and I'm especially puzzled if they have a girlfriend or a wife at that
Mhm.
point because I just
Mhm.
if it doesn't look good, I'd be like, "Honey, I think you need to shave." Right? Like
I remember those.
so I'm puzzled by that.
Yeah, that's
What-
you're
What's
allowed to
been
have
the
the puzzle.
propensity?
I don't know.
what
I don't
has-
know what the deal is there, but it's this too shall pass, right? It'll go
Exactly.
through.
I'm
it'll
trying
go-
to wait it out. I just feel like
Mhm.
we've been seeing it in the last 2 years more and more, but this last year, whoa,
Mhm.
especially.
Mhm.
I think if we really took a tally or a poll of the men in 2020 that
I
grew
think it's
a
been
beard,
longer than 2 years. I think it's been several years that beards have been in. They've been the thing to do.
yeah,
And the question is when will clean face come back? And for some, it never will. I think there will be a generational thing
I think
that
it will.
some men would like, okay, especially if it's a younger generation,
Right.
that beards were our generational thing. So
Yeah.
we'll do it. And so now
Yeah, go ahead.
for me, growing a beard is just because I've
Yeah,
never
what is
really, I've never really grown a long beard or real invested in my beard as a pet
Yeah.
kind of thing. And now it is a pet.
It is.
And I just talked to
You groom the pet.
I talked to a
Yes.
friend the other day, and he
Mhm.
actually is and he blames COVID, but he says he's growing a yeared.
Yes.
Have you heard
right?
of a yeard? Do you know what this is?
Yeah, I
Yeared.
do.
Yeah. So you don't shave for a whole year, and it's not a beard; it's a yeard.
It's a year.
I don't know that I'll do that.
Right.
Yeah. But
It's just funny to me.
yeah.
Puzzling and funny. You used to see men with beards for certain occupations,
Mm-hmm.
professions, men with beards in certain areas of the country.
Mm-hmm.
But now,
Mm-hmm.
wow, just everywhere.
And what did
There you go, my puzzle.
And since thank you for that puzzle.
You're welcome.
And since I've grown my beard, what did you say to me a few weeks ago as I was standing in front of the mirror?
I've never seen you spend so much time in front of the mirror grooming your beard.
Those that have watched us on YouTube
Oh,
and
my
Facebook
word.
know that I'm a bald man.
He
I
is.
have no hair up top. I shave my head. And so if I can have hair on my head, even if it's
Yeah.
chinward, then
You-
I'll do it.
You haven't taken like good mirror time to have hair prep in years. So I let it go, but
Yep.
wow.
That's a good puzzle.
But I am looking forward to the clean face again. So
That is a good
all
puzzle.
right, there's our puzzle.
That's a good puzzle. Hey, why don't we get into these tips of
Let's do it.
communication? And we have
Let's do
some good ones. And this is not this is an exhaustive list, right? This is but it is a list, and
Yes.
it's kind of what's top of mind for us as we've worked with hundreds of couples, and these are things that stand out to us, and also for us on how we've been able to implement these as well.
Sure.
So, you want to do number one, or do you want me to do number one?
No, you should go.
Number one.
I've been talking here for a little bit. So.
Yeah, here goes. Number one communication tip.
Mm-hmm.
If you're writing these down, it's touch base daily. Touch base daily.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this may seem like a no-brainer of sorts, but it's not for many couples, because we find that there are a lot of couples that they like ships passing in the night. They get the busyness of schedule,
right.
and they don't take time just to touch base, and touch base in meaningful and ways that build intimacy, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
touch base daily. What touch base daily on things beyond, just the regular. So,
right.
being able to be deliberate. And I know, here's the thing too. We work with several couples where one or both travel for work, and so it takes a special intentionality to touch base when you're traveling.
Right.
And some couples that we've talked to, they don't want to, they're kind of like, oh, see you when I get back kind of thing. And others don't know how to pull it off because of busy schedule. But it really takes a deliberate nature to say, you know what, we're going to touch base in a meaningful way every day, even if travel is involved, right?
Right. Or some people work schedules, somebody's on first, somebody's on third, there's those types of things, but you can still be deliberate in this day and age of touching base, whether it's a text to each other, a text of, good morning. It could be a sticky note left on the mirror, for your spouse or your partner. It could be just a little note, could be a quick phone call. You never know. So you make time. That's the big thing. You need to make time to touch base
every day. It was a little more challenging. I didn't bring this up because I'm trying to think through all of our one another couples out there, and kind of the phases that they may be engaged in. And I think about the young families, and especially young children around.
Sure.
And how mama, particularly if she is at home, she's exhausted, and so. Or if you're just a phase of life where you get the end of the day and you're kind of like, hey, okay, high five, let's go to bed kind of thing.
Right. Your brain's fried. But there's still, that's why it's so important, right? I mean, that's why we're talking about it. We understand that you're not going to be perfect at it all the time. But if you never establish the routine of touching base daily, then you will become just two people sharing space, and that's it.
I like how you said that, is being deliberate, giving yourself permission to not be perfect,
right?
But do not neglect to the extent that you get into what you could clearly define as a rut or a bad habit of neglect,
right?
And so it's you're okay to miss and not be perfect, but be deliberate so you don't get into a bad way.
Right. Exactly.
Touch base daily.
All right. Tip number 2. This is actually something that David and I learned years ago when we were going through the marriage training, and we have learned and utilized a lot of different skills and tools and valuable pieces of information from a lot of different arenas in the marriage community. So some of the things that we share with you are not produced and developed by David and Theresa Mabry, but
not original to us.
These are not original to us, correct? So one of the things that we learned a while ago was that there are 3 components involved in being able to communicate well. And that's what we're talking about is tips for communication, right? So these 3 components that we talk with couples about on a regular basis. First of all, you need to have physical closeness. If you are trying to communicate with each other and you're in 2 separate rooms of your house, if someone's in the basement and someone's in the garage, it doesn't work very well that you're going to hear each other. So physical closeness, you need to be sitting near each other. You need to be looking at each other. We encourage couples to hold hands or have some type of a physical touch. But physical closeness, the second part would be emotional openness. So that's where you are giving your partner a gift by being an active participant in what they're getting ready to share, and the person is emotionally open to share. And then finally, the third piece of that would be a place of safety. Mm-hmm. So physical closeness, emotional openness, and a place of safety. When you have these 3 components all wrapped up together, that provides such a greater avenue for couples to communicate.
And some of the research behind this would be it'd be strong with especially like physical closeness and showing the healing process for those that have had open heart surgery, and when they come home to a place where there is someone there and they're not alone and that there's physical touch of some kind and care, then their healing process is better. If you think back, another research project was unfortunately available to us in Romania in 1989 when the government dictator was overthrown, and they went into the orphanages, and there were just babies upon babies and children upon children that were neglected, and they looked at the development of children that had physical touch, had care with physical touch, and those that did not. And so physical touch makes a huge difference. The opportunity to have emotional openness being that you're kind of, who else do you have to be vulnerable to in your life? And I know some out there may not feel like they can be emotionally open with their partner, but build that, and that ties into that place of safety, is who else in the world out there can you be emotionally open with? So tie in that third component
and if you're not with your spouse or your partner, that's the goal. That's the goal. We shouldn't have these 3 components with anyone else. And when the group that studied this as well was looking at it, when you have these 3 components with people outside of your marriage, that's where affairs start to take place. Because when you start to get physically close with another person and they touch you on the shoulder, oh, I'm sorry, things are so bad, or whatever, you become emotionally open with them, sharing, information that really is none of their business, and then you feel safe with them. And when those 3 are all present with someone outside of your marriage, you're opening yourself up for an affair to take place.
Yeah, so our encouragement right away, if you are listening to this and you are on the verge of an affair, or that's a temptation to you, consider flipping it upside down, pursuing physical closeness, emotional openness, and place of safety with your spouse. Have that redemptive process, that reconciliation, and seek to heal there. Do not enter into that with any individual outside of your relationship.
Right.
So, yeah. So number 3 communication tip would be develop a deeper level than just business items. When you touch base on a regular basis, that it is so easy to get into this rut, once again, where you're only doing business items. You're like, hey, we got to take Sally to the dentist, or we have to do this item, or I'm going to be out of town next week, or I'm going to
pay this bill.
You
need to go to the grocery, whatever it is.
You've got to touch base on things beyond business items. Your marriage cannot be a business transaction.
Right.
What we call those are married cohabitators.
Mm-hmm.
So those that happen to be married and they're living in the same space, but really the intimacy is gone.
Right.
And when we use the term intimacy, by the way, I know that many people have in their brains, they'll consider like that's physical intimacy or has to do with sex. Well, intimacy really is a broader, it's a deep but broad term with the overall relationship and building an emotional intimacy, a relational intimacy with one another, which also can include sexual intimacy.
Sure.
But so when we work on some of those other areas of developing a deeper level than just business items, it means that there's that intentionality with
Mm-hmm.
sharing puzzles.
Right.
It means sharing appreciations. It's
Right.
about sharing, those, what we call the package as wishes, hopes, and dreams, as looking forward to goals together.
Goals together.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's communicating about even concerns that you have, like, hey, we have some tension over this or stress over
Right.
this. We have a conflict over this. Let's solve this in a positive way. So it's beyond business items. Seek to really touch base. The couples that struggle with this are who? Those that have been together for a while.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The relationship becomes stale,
Right.
stagnant. They get the business of life.
Mm-hmm. They stayed too focused on kids.
Mm-hmm.
And
Career,
then,
kids.
career, kids, and
Mm-hmm.
and then you turn and look at each other and you're like, oh, like, who are you?
Yeah.
I don't know. So, yeah. All right. Tip number 4. Tip number 4 is be fully engaged. If you want to be a good communicator, then be fully engaged when your partner wants to communicate with you. That is such a huge piece and a huge aspect of having that communication. Sometimes you're volleying the ball back and forth on discussion, right? Sometimes someone just needs to share something. But once again, if you are not physically close, if you're not emotionally open, if you are not facing them, then you're giving off all of the nonverbals that you're not fully engaged. And when we see our partner not fully engaged, we pull back and we don't share.
Mm-hmm.
And then that can also develop bad habits.
It's like the couple we met. We were coaching one time, and do you remember the guy that and we're not breaking confidences because this has been years ago.
This was years ago.
Years
we're not
ago.
giving any. I don't even remember a name, but anyway.
Let's call them.
Let's not name them. Let's just go
Spike and.
Oh gosh.
I don't know. Okay, so
anyway.
But we're coaching this couple, and he is convinced that he can pay attention. he can be at his best in paying attention to his wife if he has ESPN on. He literally said,
it helps me focus.
Yeah, it helps me focus if I can be watching ESPN.
Watch sports.
And so we've tried to compromise where I can have the volume off, but I have to be looking at that when she's speaking to me, and it helps me focus. And
is it those times where you have to catch yourself because you're like, okay, in their world, this is like serious, and yeah, you can't laugh. You want to laugh.
Yeah, dude.
You're like, really?
Turn Sports Center off. Turn the game off. Dude, pay attention to your wife.
Right.
You that is a lie.
Right.
Do not believe it. You need to look your wife in her eyes and pay attention to what she's saying. And this isn't even picking on the husband, but wife.
Right.
Maybe you should have that opportunity to get on the wives and say, listen, wives, pay attention to your husbands when they're trying to talk to you as well. Be engaged. And oftentimes it's the distraction is the busyness of life that happens there. Not always, but husbands, that man did not model being fully engaged.
And his compromise was not acceptable. The mute button is not acceptable at that point. The off button is what is acceptable.
Yeah.
And then this is not going to take forever. We're
Mhm.
not saying like, all day long you're not able to watch something, but
Mhm.
that was
Mhm.
crazy. Okay.
That was number 5.
Number 5.
Number 5 is give permission to use the right tools. Give permission to use the right tools. So let's unpack this a little bit, because and here's the first piece of advice. Theresa and I have done a number of YouTube videos teaching different tools,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
we make the contention that we oftentimes get into the bad habit of using the wrong tools, of using negative tools, or we've inherited from our family of origin ways of relating to one another. When we talk about tools, we're talking about relational tools, ways to relate to one another in a positive way. And so we teach, and we're very, as Theresa mentioned earlier, and we've mentioned even our last podcast, we talked about that we're very skills based in when we work with couples. So when we sit down with a couple, we're not necessarily unpacking their past and helping them work through hurts and pains. We're sitting down with them saying, what are your goals going for the future?
Mm-hmm.
And how can we help you learn new tools, new habits that can speak life and vibrancy into your relationship?
Right.
So having the right tools in your tool belt when you're going to accomplish a particular task, a particular relational task,
Right.
If you have to drive a nail, you would not get a screwdriver out. And
Right.
if you wanted to screw in a screw, you wouldn't get your hammer out.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, if you want to resolve a conflict, you want to pull out the right conflict resolution tool.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a communication tool about healthy communication, you're going to pull out a communication tool.
Mm-hmm.
And so we teach that there are problem understanding skills
Mm-hmm.
and there are problem solving skills. It's about listening, having a tool on how to listen and how to be heard and how to give feedback. But in addition to having the tools, you have to give permission by which to use the tool. So in other words, when your partner comes out with a concern and wants to solve that, or we teach an I wish, I want exercise. It's like, you know what, I wish we would go on walks in the evening now that the weather has changed, and that'd make me feel like really stress would be relieved, and I'd be grateful to be able to do that. So that's a skill, being able to share that way instead of, we never take walks.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why don't you ever want to spend time with me?
Right.
Is it-
That's what it
so-
turns into.
That's right. That's one's good, one's bad.
Right.
Give permission to use the right tools.
Right. That's good. That's gold.
That's
there.
gold right
That's
there.
gold.
They're golden hills.
All right. Tip number 6. This one is called putting your chairs in the right room. So David and I talk about setting up your chairs or putting your chairs in the right room. And when we're talking about that, we're discussing the brain, and we're discussing the different parts of your brain. And there are 2 main areas that we coach couples through, which is you have your emotional part of your brain and you have your thinking part of your brain. And too many times, couples together or one person in the relationship keeps their chair in the emotional part of their brain. It's really hard to have good communication and good assertiveness, like David just said, or being able to solve a conflict, or maybe it is just, hey, I just want you to be able to hear me, type of tool or skill. It's really hard to stay in the emotional part of your brain and be productive with that. There's a time and a place for the emotional part of your brain, but a lot of times that's where that's where they stay. And wow, that can be tragic, right? It could just be a tough one. So we encourage couples, and we talk to you about setting up your chairs, moving them from the emotional part of your brain into the thinking part of your brain. When you can do that on a regular basis, it helps you to just have better communication with each other. And it kind of goes along with the principle that years ago, Stephen Covey wrote his first book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talks about how whenever we have a stimulus for something, we have a response. And what we need to do is we need to put a pause in between the stimulus and the response. And when we when we can do that, it helps shift then that thinking or shift what's happening in our brain into the thinking part. Then we can just settle in a little bit more. And there, like I said, there's a time and a place for emotion and high emotion.
Yep.
I mean, if a tiger gets let loose in the house, right? Like, this is not the time to like, no, there's usually a fight or flight response with that. But with our spouse, we need to be able to engage in the healthiest way. And so that is setting up your chairs in the right room.
And God gave us both those parts of our brain,
Absolutely.
right? He gave us the emotional part of our brain for a fight, flight, or freeze.
Right.
So it's to help us to respond to the appropriate situation, especially when it's more urgent.
Yes.
But as you said, when we stay there for resolving conflict, that's not the right room to stay in.
Room.
You want to pick up your chairs, and it is an intentionality, picking up your chairs and moving them to the thinking brain, which means that you call time out. If you're having major conflict, you say, hold on, let's come back to this when we can both kind of have cooler heads prevailing.
Right.
And so to be able to go to the right part of your brain. We're going to talk more about that in future podcasts. That's a theme of something that we visit on and we help couples with on a regular basis. So you'll hear us talk about. So we really wanted to hit on podcast number 2, the idea and concept of having your chair set up in the right room, and because it'll come back to play in several ways coming up in the future.
It will.
Yeah. Number 7.
Oh, this is number 7. This is the last one.
Last
we said
one.
We were going to give you 7 tips.
That's right. 7 tips. And then we have, after this though, hang in here because we have a celebration to do, but we won't tell you what the celebration is yet, but we have a celebration toward the end that we want to do. But number 7 is to practice healthy assertiveness and active listening. So healthy assertiveness is not aggressiveness. Some people struggle with this, right? I mean, the idea that, well, if I say what's on my mind, they're not going to take it in the right way. But you give permission to use the right tools, right?
Yes.
So permission to use the right tools, you're giving your partner permission to be direct and say what they want more or less of in the relationship. And then also you're going to seek to understand. You really want to understand and hear your partner's heart and what they're saying, not be defensive, not try to give a rebuttal, not try to, also don't ignore and watch ESPN, but be able to repeat back. I hear you saying that you want to take more walks in the evenings and that you would feel less stress, right? You're like, yeah. So yes. Yeah. So for us, that's actually, I think it'd be helpful if we model this again. I know I gave the walking example, but why don't we think real quick and we'll give our one another couples, maybe you and I just model this real quick. What would it look like to have healthy assertiveness and active listening? So do you want to go first, or do you have one on your brain? And maybe I can share one too.
Let me think. Let's see.
Even a for reals one.
I know. I'm processing our day here. I'm trying to go back and think through something from the day.
Well, you already did one earlier.
I did?
Well, you said, hey, I know that we went out.
Oh.
This is actually a good
there you
one.
Go. Yeah. So I would, we're coming up against it for the dinner hour. And I did. I said, I know we went out yesterday, but it would be helpful to me if we could order for something to be delivered to the house, and that would make me feel relieved to know that because we're in the middle of something right before we would technically have dinner, and I was looking at the clock, calculating I would like to eat before 8 o'clock p.m. tonight.
Yeah.
So that would just make me feel relieved if we could do that.
So you're saying, I hear you saying, this would be the official way to do it, but so you're saying that you'd like us to DoorDash or something like that, have something delivered and get dinner taken care of. and that would make you feel less stressed if that was taken care of.
Yep.
Plus
Make
you're
me feel
getting-
relieved.
make you
Yes.
feel relieved.
Right.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? Got one?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it'd have to be, hey, tomorrow afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have anything on the schedule,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'd really like just to kind of relax and keep nothing on the schedule, and actually for us, and it could include getting out in the yard just to putt around, but that we can just relax a little bit and purposefully not have anything to do, because we've been kind of running it off a lot lately. And if we did that, once again, it feels like a theme of stress is going on. But yeah, I think I would feel overjoyed to spend time with you, relaxing and not having anything to do.
Okay. All right. So I hear you saying that tomorrow afternoon we have nothing on our schedule. You would like to keep it that way, to have nothing on our schedule. And if we can get out into the yard and just kind of like putz around a little bit, we can. But basically just having that open, free time of you and I just together. And that would just make you feel overjoyed not to have a schedule.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So there you go. And so, and then usually at the end, you can just say like, did I hear you correctly? And David, you would say,
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. So healthy assertiveness and active listening, right? Those are two areas. That is the last tip, but those are so key. And like David already said, this is not aggressiveness. This is not active listening is a mirroring back or repeating back word for word if you need it. Obviously, he and I shared a little bit longer, but typically you would want to share this I wish or I want in a very short version, because you're asking for your spouse or your partner to repeat it back. If you go on a rabbit trail for too long, they're not going to be able to repeat it back. But the other thing with this too is it's just helping people to be able to ask for something that they would want, and then attach that feeling word to it. And the active listening, really, lots of people, I think when we sit down with our couples, a lot of times it's like, oh, okay, it's not so bad. But then when it's you, then you're having to really practice the active listening. It's a lot harder than what it appears like. And that's what usually the comment is like, because you're trying to be so focused or whatever. But as you do it over and over time, it becomes more of your just DNA.
Yeah, part of your muscle memory.
Yeah, as a couple, and you can be using that then all the time. So healthy assertiveness, active listening. That's tip number 7.
That's right.
Do you want me to quickly run back through maybe the tips?
Yes,
to
that
just
is
say?
an excellent idea.
Okay, so tip number 1 was as a couple you need to touch base daily. Touch base daily. Number 2, you need to have these 3 components in your communication. You need to have physical closeness, emotional openness, and a place of safety. Tip number 3, you need to develop a deeper level of communication than just those business items, those types of transactions where you're just giving information to each other. Tip number 4 was be fully engaged. Give your partner a present by being fully engaged with each other when you're communicating. Tip number 5, you need to give permission to use the right tools. Like David shared, we're very skills-based, and we will present a lot of different tools. We've done YouTube videos on some of them, but if you're trying to settle a conflict, you need to be working on a conflict resolution skill, not just, just kind of half listening, or maybe you're needing a problem understanding skill. Tip number 6 is setting up your chairs in the right room, making sure that you're not only in the emotional part of your brain, but that you're also in the thinking part. And finally, tip number 7, healthy assertiveness and active listening. when you combine these two together, you will have greater fulfillment as a couple in your communication with one another.
Great. So our encouragement is to can you just pick one of these? Maybe you can tackle more than one, but maybe for you as a couple, it's just as simple as just maybe find one of those 7 on the list. And if you're listening by yourself, if you're not listening as a couple, maybe you're an individual who wants to make your marriage healthier. You want it to be more satisfying and have greater fulfillment and greater impact. And then
and that's key too. If you are listening as an individual, I mean, one person can do something, it causes a change within the relationship. If both of you just keep doing the same old, you're going to get the same results. So even if one of you is listening and you're like, you know what, I'm going to attempt active listening. And maybe the next time you hear your spouse like say something, you watch them, you listen, and then you just kind of like paraphrase or repeat it back. It's amazing what can happen by just when people feel like they've been heard.
That's right. Hey, the verse of the week is John 13:34 and 35. It says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another." Jesus said this. "By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." And there is a little sneak peek into why we are called one another. Marriage is love one another. And so, hey, we want to kind of wrap up this week by celebrating together, because this past week we celebrated our 1-year anniversary on Facebook and doing Facebook Live, and our 1-year anniversary of being on YouTube. And so, woohoo, we celebrate that. Do you remember our very first YouTube video that we dropped?
Oh my. No, we were in the kitchen. I remember that.
I think so. It was
high quality. It was high quality. We were set up. Well, like we said, like when everything went wonky last year at this time, it was like, okay, what will we do? How can we do this? And all of a sudden, it was like, well, there's social media, and I remember when you were like, we should be doing like Facebook posts, and we should do YouTube videos. And then our son was talking to us about Facebook Live, and I was just like, I can't do these things.
This is our children's fault, by the way. Can we just say this?
I know.
We are doing a podcast today because unsolicited, 2 of our children, all three of our children, at 3 different times,
and probably within a week,
to our knowledge, they did not consult with one another, but they randomly said, hey, you two should do a podcast.
Yep.
And so here we are doing our podcast. So on the 1-year anniversary of doing our YouTube videos and dropping those, and doing Facebook Live, we
more
are
than just a Facebook post.
That's
it was
right.
Facebook Live.
We have now launched our podcast, One Another Podcast, and so here's
we also tried to start. We did Instagram. We did, but it's so funny because I was nervous about doing it, and now a year later, I'm like, hey,
we're old pros.
We're not so bad. I know.
We're old pros. Cheers.
We did the social medias.
We
know all the Twitters.
We know all the Twitters.
We know all the Twitters.
Hey, here's the deal. Here's the call to action, though, is 2 things that we would ask from you. Number 1 is go visit our other social media if you have not already. We'd love for you to be a One Another couple with us, and the qualification to be a One Another couple is to engage, to be involved, to listen, and then to actually put into practice what you learned from us. Seek to strengthen your most important relationship, which is your marriage or your soon-to-be marriage, your significant other and you, to build your relationship, and then greater fulfillment and greater impact on those around you.
And we'd love to hear from you if you actually are participating and putting into action. So nothing does our heart more than when we find out that someone out there is like, hey, you know, we've actually been trying that skill, or we've actually been, doing this with each other. So.
And if you found value in this, then please give it 5 stars.
Give a review.
Give a review. It makes a huge difference, because then all the podcast overlords will move the podcast forward. And once again, not to make David and Theresa famous, but
Right.
to help strengthen marriages,
Right.
yours and others. And then the second thing with that is share it. If you
Yes.
find value in this, share it with others. Help other couples as well. Do that second part of our mission,
Mhm.
which is greater fulfillment, the first one, but have greater impact on those around you. When you share a podcast like this, when you share a YouTube video, when you share Facebook Live, when you help couples find us
Mhm.
as coaches
Even-
and others
yeah.
and seek help,
Even
you
in
are
just
making a difference.
conversation.
Mhm.
Even in when David's saying share, it's not just the share button on the interwebs to push, but share verbally with others
Mhm.
that you're rubbing shoulders with on a daily basis.
That's right. Hey, next week, what do we have going next week?
I don't know.
We are.
What do we have going next week?
that was a great throw to Theresa, and
I missed it.
Did you remember what we are doing next week? So next week, the podcast is going to be on the 5 love languages.
Love languages. I see it now. I was not turned the correct way so I could see the board.
The 5 love
So-
languages have made a huge difference in our marriage, and I know many
Yeah.
other marriages. And so, if you've never heard of the 5 love languages, they are not original to us, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Gary Chapman
Mm-hmm.
has this, and so we're gonna discuss those.
And some people have heard of it, and you may have heard of it years ago. It
Mhm.
has been around for a while. But once again, practical application of something that can speak volumes
That's
into
right.
your relationships.
That's right.
So,
Hey, thanks so much for joining us today.
yeah, we
And
really appreciate it.
we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye.
Bye.